Hey guys, in this video we are going to talk about the ending of Attack on Titan. Why did manga readers dislike the ending of Attack on Titan? Their criticism and my thoughts about it. So since I read the manga before the anime ended, I've seen a lot of complaints about the ending of AOT on various social media, as well as those who liked the ending. There were a lot of heated arguments between those parts of the fanbase. I never engaged in those arguments myself, but I still remember them. Let me just say that I personally think the ending fits the story, and I can't imagine how it would have ended any other way. Even when I read the manga I was fine with it, and didn't have many complaints. Let me quickly tell you what kind of criticism or hate the ending of the manga received and why, even though I don't agree with many of them myself. The first one is pathetic Eren and the story becoming a romance. If you didn't read the manga, I'm sure you saw that particular image of Eren crying. In this scene, Eren shows emotions. There are several reasons why people didn't like this scene. The criticism of the scene was that it was pathetic of him. They didn't like how he was shown there after he was portrayed as a cool, cold, and edgelord character. So for a lot of people who believed in his edgelordness, who thought it was real Eren, they didn't like the scene. They thought the scene ruined him and his character. For me though, that scene wasn't surprising at all. Maybe because I binged the manga, it didn't have pauses between chapters, and I didn't forget many things about Eren. I never thought of Eren as someone who hates Mikasa and Armin. When I saw that scene when Eren, Armin, Mikasa and Gabi were sitting at the table, I didn't think it was a real Eren back then. I already thought it wasn't his real feelings. He spent almost his entire life with Mikasa and Armin. Do you think he would change that much and start to hate them? And there were enough hints to show it. Armin himself believed that Eren was wearing a mask. There were scenes in a carriage, for example, showing Eren caring for his friends. So was that scene out of character for him? I personally disagree, since Eren has already shown that his original goal was to save his friends. You can call him selfish for that, and he always has been, but to say that the scene was out of his character, I disagree. The Eren we see in the scene where he cries is the real Eren, without a mask, not obsessed with freedom. It's a part he could only show in front of his closest friends, and it's the part he wanted to hide from his close friends, so they could heal him when necessary. If you think that cool, cold Eren is the real Eren, it's a delusion. He said several times how much he cares about his friends, and now he's suddenly changed? But does that excuse his actions? Of course not. But was it out of his character? No. Well, this criticism was mostly from the so-called Jaegerists. There were other reasons why the scene was criticized. The other criticism of the same scene comes from those who hate Eren, is that he had no right to show his weakness, since he killed or was ready to kill so many people. It's okay to hate Eren if you want to. He's never been a so-called hero. And you can both romanticize his breakdown, or you can hate him and say he didn't deserve it. But it's realistically portrayed. I'm not talking about liking or hating him. I'm talking from the standpoint of how a person like him would behave in this situation. Breaking down in front of his closest friend. There's nothing outside of his character in that. A friend in front of whom he can be himself one last time. I don't agree with Eren's action myself, for example, but this scene was necessary to show his real emotions. Yes, he's pathetic, but that's his real emotions. And yes, he's like he said himself, an idiot. The next criticism of the scene says he never loved Mikasa. And that's out of his character to confess his feelings for her. He turned into a simp. This story became a love story. But you know what? It was never a love story. Love is just one part of the story, just like it's a part of regular life. I don't understand why people are so against romantic love in stories. It's part of people, it's part of everyday life. Love can make you do different things, like friendship love or family love, which readers don't usually have a problem with. Romantic love is also part of life. I don't know why it's the only thing people always have a problem with. People can be in love, and the characters can be also in love. And it's no surprise that Eren fell in love with Mikasa, who he spent a lot of time with. But he couldn't show it to her since she wouldn't kill him. There were plenty of hints of romance between them too. It's not like their relationship was portrayed only as friendship or family. and Eren shows signs of caring for her enough in little scenes. Not showing clear romantic interest towards her, it's not because he didn't like her, but because he was always like that. As Armin said, he was looking into the distance and ignoring what's around him. First, he was obsessed with the outside world, and after that obsessed with killing titans. There was always something in his mind to which he was a slave. He was always a slave to his mindset. The same criticism about the story becoming a love story was directed at Ymir. The fact that Ymir loved King Fritz turned it into a love story. Well, I disagree. The story shows different aspects and not just a love story. For example, Ymir was a slave to love, and to break the chains she needed someone else to do it for her. It also connects to that scene with Kenny when he said we are all slaves to something. So that's not only about love. Love is just one part of the story. Now we are done with this particular scene, and now let's talk about the next criticism. Eren's actions were useless. Many people criticize the ending because they think the fact that the wars continued even after Eren did what he did makes his actions useless. In some ways, yeah. But yeah, if you think that Eren's actions were because he was trying to end the cycle of hatred or something, then his actions were useless. But he only did it for his friends. At least that was his motivation. So I don't agree that because Eren's actions were useless, the anime is useless. Eren is selfish, and his selfishness includes his friends. You can call him a yandere if you want. Only his friends matter to him, that's all. If his friends can live a long life, even if his friends were ready to die, he couldn't accept it. He was selfish about it. Like he said, he's just an idiot kid with a lot of power. He's not a hero. That was shown from the beginning. From the beginning when he said he was going to kill the Titans, he's always been shown that side of him. He's never changed. So Eren's actions weren't to make peace in the world, just to make his friends live a long life. You think that's selfish? You have every right to think that. I agree. But it's his character. From the beginning, the only thing that's changed is that Eren realized that about himself at the end. But he couldn't get out of the clutches of his thinking. His original motivation was to protect his friends, but when Sasha died, he started to realize there must be something else. Eren has never been anything special, that's all. And time passes and the world changes. Even if Eren wiped out all of humanity, people from the island would colonize other parts of the earth and consider themselves separate from the island. It wouldn't change anything, humanity would go on living. The next criticism comes from the shippers, and the first one is about Mikasa ending up with Jean. So Eren and Mikasa's shippers didn't like that she ended up with John at the end. Why? Because she never forgot about Eren for the rest of her life. So if she did end up with John at the end, it seemed odd. She never forgot Eren and always wore a scarf, but at the same time, she was dating someone else. You can interpret that scene any way you want, but this scene can be interpreted in two ways. For example, it wasn't John or their child. The point is that the author didn't show us that in detail. He didn't show their faces in detail and left that scene in the credit scene. So you could say she didn't marry anyone after all and remained faithful only to Eren until the end. You can also could call it a copium, and that's fair. The second interpretation is that Eren was just a part of life. And yes, she will remember him, but she will also live her life and move on. The next criticism is more reasonable in my opinion. The pacing and context wording. There was criticism that in the manga the ending was a bit rushed, and also some of the wording and context was not quite natural. Overall, the ending in the manga and anime is the same, but there were some small moments where the wording was more awkward in the manga. I can agree with that a little bit. For example, the moment when Armin said thank you to Eren for killing 80% of the world with them. In the anime, this was replaced with more fitting words about them going to hell together. This criticism is reasonable in my opinion. I myself had no problem with the ending when I read it, but looking at two different versions, I think the anime version is certainly much better. So in the anime, the ending was expanded a bit, and some things were corrected, namely pacing context and wording, especially in the conversation between Eren and Armin, although the ending itself remains the same. And that played a part. Some manga readers who had problems with this specifically changed their minds after the anime ending. And that's all. I think I covered all the main criticism that manga ending received. And I want to talk about something more. I think the expectations of anime onlys were much lower than expectations of manga readers. I think a lot of anime onlys who saw the reaction of manga readers about the ending lowered their expectations much lower, because I think the expectations of manga readers were too high. Since I binged the anime and manga after the manga ended, I wasn't one of those readers who waited for a new manga chapter every month, made series, believed in those series. I wasn't one of those who had any strong definite expectations from the manga, and it seemed to me, with where things were going from season 4 and the end of season 3, the ending was fitting for Attack on Titan, even when I read the manga. And that's all. I will see you in the next videos.